welcome to Coffee Break Blogging, where you'll learn to grow and monetize your blog in short, tactical installments you can use right away. Now here's the next episode in our series. Welcome back to another installment of Coffee Break Blogging, where this isn't just another podcast, it's a full course on building an online business based around blogging from scratch. My name again is David Risley, and if you want to catch up with us from the beginning, go to coffeebreakblogging.com to view the full archives. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into our topic of today. We're going to be talking about naming your product. Now, we've already talked about in several episodes of the show the process of creating a product. We've talked about that in a few different episodes here. And again, you can go back to coffeebreakblogging.com and view the archives and go back and find that, okay? But we need to talk about naming the product as well, because what you call the product is an important part of the marketing of the product. It then has something to do with selling it. So we need to discuss, how do we name it? Do we just name some summary type title that just kind of says what it's about, or do we need to think about some other considerations there? At the end of the day, your product name needs to serve as a brand name for that product. The name of your product needs to be something that can stand alone. It doesn't mean that it needs to go out and be on a whole separate website, or it needs to stand alone from you, but it needs to be able to exist as a brand unto itself, okay? Now, to show you some examples of kind of how I've screwed this up in the past, because I'm not going to sit here and tell you that product naming has always been my thing. Even to this day, this is something that I struggle with. Now, it certainly helps that today my main offer with my business is the Blog Monetization Lab. So right now, I only really have one central product, and it's fairly well named actually. But I want to give you a little bit of background into some of the stuff that I've pulled in the past, and you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. One of my this I think was my very first product I ever sold in this particular market, and that was 3-Day Money. Now think about that as a name, 3-Day Money. If you listen to that name, you probably think that I'm going to show you how to make money or make money online and do it in 3 days, right? And that's what many people thought, and that was never my intention. That's why it led to some real confusion. The reason I called it that was because it was designed to be a 3-day course, not because I was sitting there making promises that you were going to make money online in 3 days. That's not a promise that I would ever make, actually. And so that was a bad name. Now, I cut myself some slack on that because it was, my very first product. The other thing I don't like about it is the fact that 3-Day Money. Okay, so what is the outcome of that? Money, right? Well, money, you could make money in a number of different ways. There wasn't even anything about that product name that really lent itself to what direction I was going to take anybody. I mean, for all I know, I could be sitting there teaching you how to run a garage sale. I mean, you would never really know. And so for multiple reasons, the product name 3-Day Money kind of sucked, okay? And don't go out looking for that product, because if you see it now, it definitely is not me. That product has been off the market for quite some time. Okay, another one that I did was called Time Master Formula. Now, that's not the worst product name I ever came up with, but it is a little bit weird. It's a little weird. Do you really know what that would be about? Now, it does have the word time in it, but what is a time master? I mean, does that really make a lot of sense? Now, I went and renamed this, and this is actually what it's currently called, How to Step into Your A Game. Now, it might be a little better, but the word A game can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And that's why I'm still not a huge fan of this, but I haven't changed the title since. And in fact, this is now one of the courses on time management and alleviating overwhelm and getting goals accomplished. And this course exists right now inside the Blog Monetization Lab. And right now, that's the only way that you can get it is inside the Blog Monetization Lab. Now, another one that I have in there is called the Finisher's Formula. Okay, so it's kind of brandable, it's kind of memorable, that I like about it. But at the same time, what is a finisher? Like, that could mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And so that's kind of where that product name falls a little bit flat, is that when somebody sees it, they don't really know exactly what it's going to be about unless you have some follow-up marketing along with it. Other than that, the Finisher's Formula is actually not a bad product name. The course is actually pretty good, if I do say so myself. And again, that one, that course has to do with systemization and how to introduce systems into how you manage your time and also how you approach your business. And by having that systems mindset, it allows you to get things done in a lot more predictable way and also figure out what's holding you back. And so it's a really great course based around the theory of constraints. And that course also is found inside the Blog Monetization Lab. Now let's look at what my product is now, Blog Monetization Lab. It wasn't always called that. The first name for it, back in the old days, so to speak, was called the Inner Circle. Okay, so the Inner Circle, like you got this idea of the velvet rope thing, and I mean, I don't know. It's like it wasn't a good name, and I didn't really know where it was going to be heading when I originally named it. Now, and then I had the bright idea of let's rename that thing to VIP, the VIP program. I mean, that can mean anything, right? There's nothing about the VIP that lends itself to what this thing is all about, right? So it is now called the Blog Monetization Lab. Now, let me ask you, do you have any doubt when I say Blog Monetization Lab, what that thing is going to be about? Especially if you're in my target market. I mean, if you have no familiarity at all with blogging or any of that, then maybe you'd hear the word monetization or whatever, and you don't really know. But then that kind of kicks you out of my audience, because you are not part of my target market. And so it kind of achieves that as well. So there's not really any doubt when you hear Blog Monetization Lab, what that's all about. And it also happens to be brandable and easy to communicate. And so that brings us right into 3 product name, I'll say criteria that I want to communicate to you here today. Okay. The first one is that your product name should be brandable. Now, what I mean by brandable is that you should be able to say it to somebody and they're going to be able to remember it, or it needs to be able to tell a story. It needs to lend itself to a story, which, of course, that you would then tell as part of your marketing. But the idea there is that once they've heard that story, then it's going to bring to mind everything that product name means. Now, one example that I know about out there is Ryan Dice, and one of his first products was called the Napkin Project. And I think it's a course that he still sells, but the Napkin Project, I mean, when you hear that, it's very brandable, but it does not lend itself immediately to what that's all about. You're thinking, it does get your curiosity because you're like, okay, a project on a napkin, interesting. But when you actually go and look at his sales page for it, he goes into this whole story about how he created a business model on a napkin. And that's what the course is teaching. And so because of that story, you hear the Napkin Project and it's memorable. And for that reason, it's a very good brand, a very good name for the product. Okay, so when you are coming up with your product names, you want to be thinking in terms of brandability. Is it easy to say? Is it short? You don't want to have real long product names. Or does it lend itself to a story that you can then tell in your marketing? People really remember stories really well. Okay, let's jump into the second product name criteria, and that is communicating the benefit. Okay, now I will say, again, going back to the Napkin Project, the name itself doesn't have to have the entire benefit inside the name. Like the Blog Monetization Lab, that has the main benefit inside the name of the product. The Napkin Project does not, but it lends itself to that story, and that is where it comes. That's where the benefit comes in. So what you need to be doing is you need to think about what is the real benefit of your product. What is the outcome that they're going to be getting from it? And then you need to brainstorm from there into how to communicate that benefit in a very short way that could be brought into the name of your product or into the backstory of your product and how it came to be. And then you could bring that into the name of your product. Okay. But you definitely want people to think about the benefits of your product, and the name helps because it's that piece of marketing that's just out there. That they don't have to read the whole sales letter for, okay? Now, the third product name criteria would be, and this is more of like making sure you don't jump into problems, but that is not leading to any confusions, Okay, so some ways that you can lead to confusions might be really vague product names that don't lead to anything. Going back to my story about 3-day money, I mean, it was just an extremely vague product name, and it led to confusion as to what the thing was all about. Are you making money in 3 days? Is it a 3-day course? How are you making the money? I mean, there was just a lot of questions being introduced by that product name, so it kind of blew. Okay, but the other thing too is you want to be aware of other products on the market, and you don't want to name your product in such a way that it could lead to brand confusion with other products out there. Okay, so that's something to be aware of as well. No, so let me reiterate those 3 product name criteria. Number 1 is you want it to be brandable or lend itself to the backstory of how it was created. Number 2 is you want to make sure that it communicates the benefit that they're going to get out of it. And number 3 is that you want to make sure that it does not lead to any confusion or follow-up questions. Okay? So when you're coming up with your product name, I would highly recommend that you sit down with an empty document, Google Docs, Evernote, piece of paper, doesn't really matter, and just brain dump a bunch of potential product names. Okay, that's what I recommend that you do. Your first instinct is probably not going to be your best one. I mean, 3-day money was kind of my first instinct, and there it is. It wasn't that great. Okay, so I would recommend that you sit down and just start naming out as many potential product names as you can come up with. It's kind of like headlines. You've probably heard that the best way to come up with the best headlines for your blog post is to sit down and create a list of like 20 of them. Okay, because the first headline you come up with is probably not going to be your best one. But if you force yourself to go through the exercise of writing 20 headlines to one blog post, one of those 20 is probably going to be really, really good, okay? And then that's what you can use. Well, do the same thing with naming your products. Treat it kind of like a headline. It's not going to be as long, but you can get some really good ideas when you do that. And then once you've got that list of ideas, maybe go out to a few people you know and ask their feedback on those things. Maybe get their opinion on it. Realize opinions they vary all over the place. So just because if you get a wide span of opinions and there's not really anything that jumps out as a favorite, then whatever, make your own mind up. It's just something that can help you with some feedback. Now, to end off this topic, I also want to give you a few follow-up things that you're going to want to do and look at as you pick your name. The first one is that you'd want to go out and see if the domain name is available for it. I think that that's probably going to be a good idea when you're branding your product, is to see if the .com is available. Don't go off and get one of the other domain extensions because they're kind of dumb, and most people are not going to assume those things. Okay, so just try to stick to a .com as much as you can. Now, if the product if it's going to stand alone as its own thing, then you definitely need to have your own .com. But even if it's going to reside on your blog and kind of be mixed in with other stuff, it's not a bad idea to have that .com, because then you could tell people about it via word of mouth. You could be a guest on somebody's podcast and you can direct people to it. And just set it up as a domain redirect. It isn't as if you need a separate hosting account for it. You just set it up to redirect right to the page on your blog that talks about that product. So, for example, blogmonetizationlab.com. That is not its own website. It simply points to the page at blogmarketingacademy.com that talks about the lab. Okay, so that's an example. 2 other quick things you're going to probably want to do. You're going to want to get a logo made for the product, because that will help you with branding it, talking about it outside of your sales page, things like that. Also, raising the perceived value of your product. That logo does affect perceived value. The other thing that you're probably going to want to do is get a few product images made for the product. Now, again, I am specifically here talking about digital products. So go and get images that really signify that product. Common ones done are a DVD or a book. It's product images as if your product was a physical thing. And these kind of things can help with branding that product and bringing the value of it forward when you're actually selling it. Okay? So if you want to dive deeper into this, but also go into all the particulars of actually creating your product, I've I've got an action plan over inside the Blog Monetization Lab called the Product Creation Blueprint, which goes over a lot of this stuff, okay? So head on over to blogmonetizationlab.com. Check out how you can become a lab member today, and it costs less than $1 a day to do this, and there's a lot of material in there to help you grow your business. Basically, we're taking what we're doing here at Coffee Break Blogging, but we are really speeding it up using a checklist, systematic approach inside the Blog Monetization Lab. And that's blogmonetizationlab.com. Okay, thanks so much for listening, and I will see you next time on Coffee Break Blogging. Thanks for listening to this episode of Coffee Break Blogging. If you like what you heard here today, we have something awesome we'd love to send you. It's called the Blog Conversion Guide, and it has 9 tweaks you can make to your blog in order to increase your conversion rate to get more opt-ins and sales. As one of our listeners, we'd love to give you access to this guide absolutely free. You can get your copy right now by going to coffeebreakblogging.com. Again, go to coffeebreakblogging.com to get your copy, and we'll see you next time.